Well, we've just been listening to the Reform UK press conference this morning. Richard Tice stood up on stage, of course, the leader of Reform UK, and he announced that the candidate for Wellingborough, which is the seat that Peter Bone obviously lost, will be Ben Habib. You will all know Ben Habib. He's a regular on GB News. He was a Brexit MEP. What did you make of Richard's speech?
I thought it was too long, and I think it should have been punchier. It should have been not so much about what's wrong with the Tory party. We know what's wrong with the Tory party. That's why they're 20 points behind in the polls, or 17 points behind in the polls. And it should have been punch, punch, punch. This is what we will do, and this is why we will do it differently.
Yeah.
Didn't seem to be anything new in it.
We were rooting for him, but I think it was a missed opportunity.
Yeah.
I do think it was a missed opportunity. I like people coming in to disrupt the political landscape. I do. I think we need that. We never needed it more than we need it right now. But in fact, Ben Habib used a great line when he stood up on stage and he said, it's not about destruction. I think he said it's about construction and bringing a positive new vision for the country. But they have a big hill to climb. Well, joining us now is former Conservative MP Neil Parish. Morning, Neil. Great to see you. Just give us your assessment, really, of that presentation by Reform UK. It's a general election year. They've got to get this sort of stuff right.
Yeah, I mean, Richard Tice, as you quite rightly said, was very, very, hard on the Tories with all the problems that are there. And, of course, some of the solutions of, knocking back people not paying tax up to 20,000 and knocking off 20p off of fuel. None of this stuff was all costed, and so it was a sort of great rant against the Tories. But I'm afraid not a lot of substance. And I think that where I think the Tory MPs listening really need to wake up was when Richard said, I am not going to take special plea bargaining. Tory MPs are very right-wing, very much on the reform wing of the party. I'm still going to stand candidates against them. So, the Tory party's got to wake up. The Reform Party is a real challenge. People are fed up with immigration. They're fed up with what's going on. They're fed up with the situation in Northern Ireland. So they picked off a lot of things which people are really upset with. Now, I think the by-election is going to be interesting as well, because Peter Bone, you see, very much on the right of the party. It will be interesting to see whether they would be able to win that. And, of course, interesting when they go on and say, of course, we are very concerned about Labour, because I would argue they are one of the reasons that Labour will get in. And, of course, that's what the Tory party will do come the general election. And it'll depend when we get to the general election how much people want to get rid of the Tories and how much they trust Labour to run the government, because the one people that are not going to run the government after the general election are Reform. So it's a very interesting time, but there's a real threat to Tory MPs, and they must unite and come together. Otherwise, they are absolute toast, because the more we fight each other, the more we have kamikaze pilots exploding their planes and their fleets. We will hold.
Yeah. The thing is, Neil, obviously, the assumption is that Reform UK appeals to the right because they're very much about closing down the borders, perhaps, and a lower tax and competition and putting the individual at the middle centre of decision-making. However, that very powerful policy that they've had from really almost from day one as to not paying any tax until you earn £20,000, which will help students on part-time jobs. It will help the elderly on part-time jobs. It will help parents on part-time jobs, the lower paid. That's such a powerful policy. And yet so therefore, that should appeal to the left. That might appeal to the red wall, but somehow they're not pushing that hard enough, are they?
No, they're not, because I'm a great believer, have been all my political life, to take, those that are earning very little, let's take them out of tax altogether, because then naturally their money goes further. So, yes, it'll be interesting to see what Hunt does in the budget. They've got one last throw of the dice, really, with the budget coming up. And I think people will, when it comes to the general election, then give it real thought. And I think that, the idea that what the Tory party mustn't do, and they're doing the same as they did between 92 and 97, absolutely destroying themselves, you see. And if they carry on doing that, and every MP in 97 had a different idea of how to run the government, and they all went out with the tide. And I think Tory MPs need to learn the lesson of 92 to 97, and they want to wake up to the fact that reform is a real threat, and they need to get out there, get the right policies, campaign hard, and they might yet pull the rabbit out of the bag, but the rabbit is a very long way down in that bag.
And if you think about history, of course, Neil, in the run-up to the 97 general election, David Davis wrote this big open letter to Tory MPs, which I'm sure you saw yesterday. He made the point in the run-up to the 92 election, the Tory party fought Labour in the form of Neil Kinnock. In the run-up to 1997, they fought each other. The result was disastrous. Blair's biggest landslide, 179 seats. They seem, some of them, these Tory MPs, in my view, to have a death wish.
Yeah, they seem to be suffering from amnesia, aren't they? And they can't seem to remember what happened. And I think political parties, when they sort of stay in the doldrums and they stay 20 points behind and more in the opinion polls, they just get scared and they just don't act rationally. And the Tory party at the moment, some of the MPs just are not acting rationally. They've got to come together, fight together. The old adage, you either win together or you die all together, and I think that's got to be fought. But I think at the moment there's a lack of realism. Now I think 24 is D-Day. There's going to be an election. All right, you could go to January 25, but that's desperation. It will be, I suspect, October or November this year, and I think we got that chance for people to come together. But don't underestimate reform, and don't try doing any deals with reform either, because Richard made that absolutely clear, because that's what a lot of them will be up to. You see, the more right we are, the more chance we won't have a reform candidate standing against us. Well, he made it absolutely clear, wherever he's got candidates, he's going to put them. And let's wake up and smell the coffee.
All right, thank you, Neil. Neil Parish there, always good to see you, former Conservative MP. I'm trying to look at what you're saying at home. Email us now while we listen to the news and we can have a look at them.
And do you think that cat phrase about Starmer's going to catch on? What did it... I've already forgotten.
Starmageddon.
Is that a great headline? It might make some headlines.
It's all right.
But again, if it was a big thrust in the speech, it was almost fleeting.
Yeah, it was. It was. Let us know your thoughts. I'm dying to know what you made of it. gbviews@gbnews.com.